There's a photograph that was taken yesterday of Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf riding in a golf cart at Cam Hayward's annual Irons for Impact charity event, and the two look like they're lifelong best friends. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates that I hope you'll also check out. The Steelers Open mandatory minicamp this morning on the South Side. A few walkthroughs and other events in the morning, and then by afternoon at 1 p.m. specifically, there will be a full-blown practice. Now, not pads, not contact, not any of that stuff, but an actual football practice involving, theoretically anyway, all of the actual football players. Two of those are certain to be Rodgers and Metcalf, who, of course, have met previously when they had their very highly publicized throwing session a few weeks back. The only connection, really, that Rodgers had with the Steelers in any form, at least that was visible, until the past few days. But to see this image that was shot by team photographer Taylor Olison, to see Rodgers with his big right hand around Metcalf's shoulder and Metcalf looking at the camera with this, "Aw, shucks, I can't believe I'm in a golf cart with this guy" expression, right then and there, with one photo worth 1,000 words, we have our real preview of what minicamp's going to be all about. It's going to be the Rodgers introduction, indoctrination, whatever it is that you want to call it. It's going to be all about him. Now, before you leap to any kind of conclusion based on stuff that I've been saying here for, months now, I have zero issue with this. And here's why. He's here. The goal, the objective, collectively, has been set, as I went over on yesterday's show. That's plainly Super Bowl. Nobody's looking past 1 year. Nobody could be or should be looking past 1 year. So all of the eyeball directions change, and they all go to one player. That's as it should be once it's settled, once he's here. And I'd really hope that the next part I'm about to say would be crazy obvious. And I'm sure that it will be to a lot of you listening, but I'm going to blurt it out anyway. I'm going to blurt it out once and then not revisit it. When you sign Rodgers, there are no quarterback competitions. There are no quarterback controversies. If either Mason Rudolph or Will Howard were to have some superlative showing at St. Vincent College, it's not going to matter in this scenario. You signed Rodgers. You committed your year to signing Rodgers. You based an entire year of the franchise's existence on the prospect that he can still be at least a reasonable part of what he once was as recently as 2021. And there's no midstream switch here. This is not Mitch Trubisky. This is not Kenny Pickett. This is not Justin Fields. When you go in, you go all in. From day one, that's today, and onward. If Rodgers were to, for whatever reason, struggle in training camp, doesn't matter. If he were to struggle in preseason games, I mean, assuming he'd even be involved in those, maybe there's 1/4 of one game out of the three. But if that were to happen, obviously nothing changes. If the offense in general were to just look totally out of sync over the first, month or so, irrelevant. Rodgers is going to be the quarterback in East Rutherford. Rodgers is going to be the quarterback in Dublin. He's going to be the quarterback through the bye. He's going to be the quarterback coming out of the bye. He's going to be the quarterback, barring, the obvious. And that would be an injury or multiple injuries. So, yeah, again, I'm going to kind of pseudo-apologize here for stating something that should be just as plain as stamped cement. But here we are, and this is that morning, and this is that day, and I'm going to just go right ahead and get it out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and take this further because some of the feedback that I got to yesterday's episode strongly suggested that my point was missed by at least some whenever I was going through the Steelers position by position and asking if they were a Super Bowl team at that position. The reason that I was doing this wasn't to cut everybody up. I thought this was obvious. Maybe it wasn't. The reason that I was doing this was to further fortify my main point here. If you go and get Aaron Rodgers and you make this kind of commitment to this year, then go all the way. Go all the way. Don't be messing around with half measures. You've already thrown that out. And maybe somehow Omar Khan gets through this season lucky enough to hold on to some extra draft picks, and maybe there's some other mechanisms they can use to move up and get themselves the franchise quarterback long-term in the draft next year in Pittsburgh, and maybe there isn't. But what you do here is you don't just fill the holes. You push all the buttons. Not some of them, not halfway. You pound them. So to anybody who took exception last week whenever I brought up the Jonnu Smith possible availability out of Miami, oh no, how can you say that? There's already tight ends here or whatever. Well, Smith, in all likelihood, is better. So if it's not another WR2, then maybe it's a TE1. Or go ahead and get both. Go completely berserk. Because that, as I see it, is the only way this season makes any sense. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Today's J1Q comes from Rick, who says, respectfully, as always, DK, with your Monday episode, you were promoting the fallacy that the parts of a football team all need to be of Super Bowl quality while ignoring that the sum can be greater than the whole. And what's your standard to be considered Super Bowl quality anyway? For example, you say that the Steelers' excellent tight end room falls short because there's no Rob Gronkowski, the greatest tight end in history. Is that the standard? Well, in that case, every team falls short. Is Jalen Hurts a Super Bowl quality quarterback? Sure, he won with that Philadelphia offensive line and Saquon Barkley, but if he were the Steelers' quarterback, would you say the same thing? And is Aaron Rodgers the equal of Hurts right now? I don't know. I do know that the Bengals have an historically terrible defense, and yet they're considered a Super Bowl threat. The Chiefs have no tackles, and their wide receiver room isn't as good as the Steelers. The Ravens' offensive line is a mess, and they have one linebacker. I get where you're going here, Rick. I get it. And again, to re-stress from the first segment, this was a lot of what I was getting back. It was as if I was somehow on the attack here. When I'm on the attack, you don't have to guess at it. Okay, it'll be pretty clear. That's not what this was. This was looking at the team overall and asking if the team was of Super Bowl quality. At no point in that episode did I say that, how did you put it here? That all parts of the team need to be of Super Bowl quality. Never said that, never suggested it, never thought it. That would be weird. I'm really not generally an all or nothing type of discusser or debater. But when I go through all of those positions, and the only one that I felt rose to the level of Super Bowl quality was at edge rusher, I feel like I've made a fairly reasonable point. The Steelers need to bolster other areas. I don't believe that between now, today, on the 10th of June, with almost 3 full months between this practice and that game in New Jersey, that anyone, least of all Omar Khan or Mike Tomlin should consider this roster to be complete. Not in this circumstance. If you're going for it, go for it. You describe the Steelers as having, I'm going to find your exact word here, an excellent tight end room. There's a possibility that's true. If anyone can ever get the most out of Pat Freiermuth, and by that I mean principally in terms of targeting him more often, and if anybody can get Darnell Washington to the next level of pass catching. And let's not forget that they still have to replace Donald Parham, who was probably going to be their second most targeted tight end, is now lost for the season. That's what you're saying is excellent, and what I'm saying is incomplete. Is that fair? Every team in the National Football League, as you noted, with examples, with quality examples, is incomplete. The ones that win tend to be less incomplete than the others. I'm not going to operate here on a prayer. I'm not going to operate on a belief that I happen to genuinely hold that Khan's going to go and get an impact wide receiver until I see it. And then when I see it, we can talk about this all over again. And the same applies to whatever tight end gets added. And then in turn, the same will apply to however the team happens to progress through training camp, through the preseason. Right now, I don't see a Super Bowl team. Not exactly an outrageous stance to hold. What I'd like to see is more done toward making it a Super Bowl team, because this is the bed that's been laid. I appreciate the question. I appreciate the thought you put into it, Rick. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. Again, today is day one of minicamp. I'll be over there covering it for DK Pittsburgh Sports, and then we will have a live double shot of Steelers that'll include video interviews and so forth from the scene. Should be a fun one. That's at 4 p.m. Eastern on our YouTube channel and, of course, on both our app and website for DK Pittsburgh Sports. Hope to see you then.